Welcome to lecture number 8. In this lecture, we are going to cover the following topics: tables in HTML, Rowspan and Colspan, CSS on tables, and Hoverable tables. Let's start with tables in HTML. First, we need to know what is a table. A table is a structured set of data made up of rows and columns. Any data that is represented in the form of a table is the tabular data. In HTML, we can create a table with the help of table tag. But within this table tag, we have certain internal elements that are required to be used. So let's take an example now. Suppose you have been given this table to create in HTML. So when we are inside the table tag, we need to create these rows and columns. In order to create the rows inside the table tags, we use tr. tr tag means table row. In order to create the columns, we use td, that is table data. But within this table, we have some division. The first part of the table will be considered as the table header, while the rest of the part will be considered as the table body, that is the actual data. So in this table, the header will be represented by th, that is the table header. And we also have a categorization that the first row will always be inside the t-head tag, that is the table header, while the rest of the rows will be inside the t-body. So apart from the header, the rest of the rows will be considered as the actual data and will be used inside the t-body tag. Now we have been given this example to create this table. We are having 3 columns and 3 rows. Let's try to create this table in HTML. First, we need to insert a table tag. Now you must understand that to create a table, we first of all create the first row. The first row will be represented as tr. Since it's just one row, so we are just going to write one tr tag. Within this tr, that is the first row, we are having total 3 columns. So inside the first row, we are having total 3 cells. And that is the table header. It means that we have to create 3 such table headers, that is the th tag. So 3 th tags we have inserted. And we also discussed that the first part of the table will always be the t head. So everything goes inside the t head tag. This is our table header. So right now we have not written anything inside it, but the first row is already created. If you look at the table, the first column, that is the first table header, is roll number. Then inside the second one we have course. The third table header is marks. After saving, you will be able to get these table headers. But this really doesn't look like the table that we had seen in the slide. But anyways, we can continue. Then we have the second row. In order to create the second row, we need to first of all have the table body. That is the t body. So within the t body, we need to create our table data. So we have the second row, we have written the tr tag, and since we have 3 columns, and those 3 columns will represent the data, so that is why we'll be inserting total 3 td tags. td and then another td. So here the data is Barinder. You can look at the table while creating it in your HTML file. And it is the next data is BA and the next data is 99 marks. So you can see that the data has been inserted right below these table headers. It might still not look like the table that we had just seen in the slide. But anyways, we can still move on. So all in all, you can see that total 2 rows have been created, out of which the first row is the table header while the second row is the table data. Out of these, after this, we need to create 2 more rows. So let's create one more row, tr, and we need to have 3 td tags. So the first td tag represents this data, Navdeep, and the next td tag represents BA, while the last one represents 78 marks. Save the file and we have got a second row. The last row, inside the last row, the first column, the roll number is Adarsh. The next column has, that is the course. The course is BBA, while the last table data represents marks, and that is 90. So it's 90 for this student. You can see the output. We have got a complete table, but the border in this table is missing. To apply the border, you can come to the table tag and write border attribute, and you can give it any value. If you use more value, that is a higher value, then it will give it a thick border. If you use a lower value, then the border will be thin. Right now I'm using 2. After saving, you will be able to see that the border is applied. But still something is missing, and that is the space between the cells. As we have seen in the slides, the space between the cells, within the cells, was quite large. To enhance, or you can say to increase the space within the cell, you need to use an attribute, and that is cell padding. And you can assign it any value. For now, I'm giving it 10. And now you see that the spacing within the cell has been increased. But there is one more attribute, and that is cell spacing, that can be used for increasing the space between the cells. So you can write cell spacing equals to, you can apply any value. Let's say I'm giving 5. So can you see that the space between the cells has been increased? Now after this, you can apply it any border color, or you can also apply it the background color or the background image. In order to apply the background color to this table, you can simply write bg color attribute, and you can write any color. Let's say for now I'm simply writing yellow. So it will apply it a yellow color. Let's say if you want to give any background image, then you can use background attribute here. So let's try once background. That what if we write background attribute and we need to apply the image. Let's check what images we are having. So right now we are having one image, that is back.jpg. Let's check back.jpg, and we need to check that whether it will be applied or not, and yes, it has been applied. So the background image is quite dark here. Later on, using CSS styles, you can change the font color of the text. Now we know how to create a simple table. Let's now add some complexities. Sometimes there might be a need to create a combination of multiple rows or a combination of multiple columns. That time, Rowspan and Colspan come into picture. In order to make a cell span over multiple rows, we use this Rowspan attribute, while to make a cell span over multiple columns, we use the Colspan attribute. It may be hard to understand at the very first sight, but let's try it with the help of examples. In the first example, there is a cell whose width is equivalent to these 2 columns. So we will use Colspan equals to total how many columns it is spanning. So we will write here 2. In the second example, there is another cell whose height is equivalent to these 2 rows. So that is why we will write row span equals to 2. Sometimes there might be a need to create a combination of both. So we can use both row span as well as col span. Let's now consider a detailed example. In this example, the first row consists of 3 columns, but this cell is spanning over 2 columns. We will write col span equals to 2. When you create the second row, so this cell is spanning over 2 rows, we will write row span equals to 2. While the last cell is also spanning over 2 rows, we will write row span equals to 2. This cell and this cell will remain as such. After this, when you're creating the next row, you need not to create this cell again as they are already created. Need not to create this one. There's no need to create this one. You will be creating only this cell and this cell. After this, you have another row. Again, in the same pattern, you need to span over these 2 rows. It will be row span equals to 2. And same for this as well. That is row span equals to 2. While creating the last row, you need not to do anything special as they can be created as such. So now we are going to create this table with the help of HTML. We already have the image of this table for reference so that we can create exactly the same table in HTML. So we need to now start with the first row having name, marks and total marks as the table header. Let's start with the table tag. So we need t-head and we need 3 th tags. In the first one we have name. In the second one it's marks. Then in the third one we have total marks. Right, so we have got the 3 table headers. Now, as we discussed previously, that this specific cell, the marks cell, is spanning over 2 columns. So we need to come to the th tag and write here col span equals to 2. So now it will be able to span over 2 columns once we have created the second row. Now we need to create the second row. In this second row, we will create the first column, second, third, and then fourth. So let's continue. Now we need to have the T body, that is the table body. And we need to now create our first row within the table body. So within this TR, we need to have total 4 TD tags. Let's first of all insert all these TD tags. This is the first one, then we have second one, this is the third one, and now we have the last one. So in the first TD, what we are having Rahman. We need to write here Rahman. And first of all, we can write all the data. Then we need to write sub 1, 95, and then 195. Sub 1. Then we have 95. And then we have 195. Alright. So yes, we have got the data. But still, it is not exactly the same. This cell has to span these 2 rows. So come to this TD tag and write here row span. You need to write row span equals to 2. So after this, we also have the last column. That is, this cell has to span total 2 rows. So again, we will write row span equals to 2. Right. For better understanding, we can also insert the border so that we can have the exact situation. Right. So let me zoom in for your reference. And yes, it is creating the right way. It's the same way as we wanted it. Now, we need to create this specific cell and this cell. Now, you must understand that this row, that is the second row, is already created. So, while you create the third row, you do not have to create this cell and you don't have to create this cell. You need to create only these 2 cells. Right. So let's continue. We need to add one more TR tag, and within this we will write 2 TDs In the first TD, we have sub 2, and in the second TD, we have, it's 95. It is not 95, it's 100. So we have to write here 100. Right, so we have got 100. Yes, we are going the right way, finally. And so this cell, this specific row will also be created the same way as the above. So let's continue without any doubt. So we need to create 4 TD tags. In the first TD tag, we have Asif. And then in the second TD tag, we have sub 1. And the third one we have, it's 95. It's 95. And in the last one we have, it's 192. So let's write here 192. So after writing all this, when you have inserted the data, you will see that this Asif need to span total 2 rows. So we are already going to write row span equals to 2, and for the last one also we are going to write row span equals to 2. Okay, that's great. Now finally we are left with these 2 cells, so let's create it quickly. Another tr tag and 2 td tags. The first one is having sub 2. And the last one, that is this cell, it's 98. So right, we have got the exact table. Just a little bit styling is left. Let's now perform some styling on this table with the help of HTML only. So we need the border color. We also need a thick border. And we also need some spacing within the cell. As you can see, there's a lot of space within the cells, and there is some space between the cells as well. Right. So let's continue. Within the table tag, we need to write cell padding. And I'll write cell padding equals to 15. Save it, and you can see that the space within the cell has been increased. Then I'll write cell spacing, and here I'll take the value as 10. The data has changed accordingly. Then we can give it some height and width if required. In this case, not really required, but still, if you want, you can include it. Height equals to, we are going to write again 300. 300. Let's give it the border. Border already we have given, but we can change the value. We can write here 20. So we got a thick border, and the border color is also required. Border color. So border color, I'll write here, it is green. Yes. Now you must be wondering that we are not using the CSS here, and that's correct. We are not using any CSS right now. We are simply using the HTML attributes in order to style our table. Right now, it isn't required for us. So that is why we are using the maximum HTML attributes. Now further, we are left with one more thing, that we need to have a background image. You can either insert a color by using BG color, or you can insert the background image by using the background attribute. Now within this, we are going to write background equals to, and we have one image here. There's a new image, lights.jpg, and we are now going to include lights.jpg. So once you have saved, you can see that you have got exactly the same table. After implementing the concept of Rowspan and Colspan, now it's time to add CSS on tables. So in order to add CSS on tables, we need different properties, and we are now going to use all these properties: height, width, padding, text align, color, background image, borders, border collapse. For understanding CSS on tables, we are not going to create any separate table because we already have it. Now let's try to style this with the help of CSS. So we need a style tag, and within the style tag, we need the table tag. So what is the first thing that we are going to do? So the first thing that we are going to do is we need to give this table border. We already have the border attribute in HTML, but we can do it with the help of CSS as well. So now we are going to write border, and we need to apply, let's say I want to apply 5px, and I need solid, and I need black. You can put any color. So what do you see? That the border has been applied, but it's only the outer border. It is not having the border within the cells. So what we need to do is we need to group the selectors, and we also need to mention th. And it's done for th. Now it's time for td tag as well. It has been applied for all the cells. But when we create any table in CSS, it's the best practice to not have the gaps between the cells. So in order to remove these gaps, we need to use border collapse property. Right, so let's use border collapse property. So the border collapse property can be either separate or collapse. If you write separate, then the gaps will always be there. But if you write collapse, then the borders will be joined. Let's now increase the width of the table by using the table selector separately, and write width as 100%. You can write any value, but right now we need 100% so that we can have this kind of output. You can see that the table is, the size of the table, that is the width, is spanning across the browser. Right. If you want, you can also increase the size, or you can say the height of these cells by coming to these selectors, table, th and td. You can write height. You can mention any value. Let's say if I want to write 80px, so you can see that the height also increases. Next is you can also increase the padding, that is the space within the cell, by writing the padding attribute. It's the padding property here. By using the padding property, let's say if I want to write 10px, so you will observe that the space has been increased. Then if you want that the data, you can see that the table header is already by default centralized. But if you want your table data also to be in the center of the cell, then you can write text align as center. So you can see that all the data, all the text is now in the center of the cell. Now if you want, you can also change the text color by writing color, though it's not required here, but for understanding the property, we have to. Now that is up to you whether you want to change the header colors or not. So it all depends. Right now we have mentioned all our selectors, and we are using all the properties within these selectors only. So that is why it is being applied to all the elements. To me, the data looks very small, so we can also use the font size property. According to your requirement, you can use any property. It's not that the ones which are specified in the slide only that you can use in the table. That is up to your requirement. So I'll mention, because I feel that the font size is quite small, so I can write 30px, and you can see that the font size is now increased. Now it looks better. Further, you can also apply some background color if required. So for now, let's say if I want to use aquamarine, the background color will be applied. And if you don't want to use the background color, then you can use the background image. So we need to specify the URL, and all that we need is the, let's say if I write back.jpg, great. So Can you observe one thing, that the background image is being applied to each and every cell separately. So this is not that we want right now. Well, it can be your requirement. It doesn't look that bad. But if you want to apply it to the whole table as one background image, then avoid writing it inside th and td. So you can specify this background image inside the table tag only. Now it looks better. The contrast of the background image with the font color is not so great, so we can change the color to white. Now it looks better. You can also do some experiments with the border of the table, like we can use various border properties. Right now we are writing a border only, but you can also write, let's say, border top, border bottom, and all the properties that have been covered in the past can be used here. So let's say I need only border bottom and I need, let's say, 2px, and the color I want is white. So you can see, let me maximize the browser, and this is how your table looks. And that is great. You can also apply the hover pseudo property on the tables. So let's have a look at the hoverable tables. In order to highlight the rows, you can use tr and then the pseudo property hover and mention all the properties that you want to have while you are hovering over the table row. If you want to highlight the cells, then you can write td and then hover and mention all the properties that you want to have while you are hovering over that specific cell. Next one is, if you want to highlight the full table, then you can use table hover. Now let's implement this within our table. Let's highlight our cells and rows. So first of all, I'll try using td. I want to highlight the specific cell upon which I'm hovering. So I'll write td hover and I want to give it some background color. Let's say I want to give this color. And you can give it some transparency by using alpha, RGBA, that is red, green, blue, which are the primary colors, and the last one is A, which stands for alpha and helps you giving the transparency. So you can see whenever I'm hovering over any cell, it is highlighting it. So it is not highlighting the table header because I'm not using on the th tag and only on the td. Further, you can also specify, let's say, tr. So it will start highlighting the specific row. So as you can see, it is highlighting all those rows. Now in case, let's say, you don't want this table to be very large, you can also reduce its size. Let's say I'll change, if I comment it, let's see what happens. Right, so this is the actual height without using any height property. And let's say the font size also I'm commenting out for the time being. So this is actual table without using any height or font size. Let's now create a striped table. A striped table has background color or any other property applied to the alternative rows. So alternative row here can means either the odd rows or you can have the even rows. So right now what we need is that we need to give color only to the even rows. So let's check how to do it. For this, we need to write down the tr tag. First of all, I'll just mention simple background color. Let's say I'm using this color. So you can see right now that the background color is being applied to all the rows. But if you want to apply it to alternative rows, then you need to use the pseudo property, and that is nth child. Nth child, and here the value you need to give is, let's say, even. So right now you can see that it is being applied only to the second row. For applying such kind of, you can say, such kind of pattern, you need to have a larger table. Large means that you need to have more data. So let's duplicate the entries. I'll simply duplicate the entries in order to understand that how this is working for us. And yes, so you can see that it is working exactly the way we want. Now let's say if you write here odd, so it will start applying to the odd rows. We have now approached the end of the lecture. These are the references. And these are the program links that you can refer. That's all for this lecture.